Hello viewers, welcome to Study with Master Notes. How are you all? Hope you all are fine. Okay, so today we will go Unit 9 of MEG 6 American Literature, the narrative technique and structure. I will discuss about narrative technique and structure of Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letters. Okay, here it is the main chapter of Unit 9, that is narrative technique and structure. In always all exam, most of the exam, they ask the narrative technique of Scarlet Letter and structure. So you may go through the Unit 8, the characterization. Already I have discussed the characterization of major characters and minor characters of Scarlet Letter. So you should go my previous video and description box, and please like, share and subscribe my channel. Okay, so we will go narrative technique and structure. Here it is the structure, objectives, introduction, symmetrical design, form and content, open-endedness, latest sum up and suggested reading. So again I am repeating, that is structure, that is objectives, introduction, symmetrical design, form and content, open-endedness, latest sum up, suggested reading. So what are the objectives? Every unit has its own objective. Here it is also in Unit 9, the narrative technique and structure. So we have already told you that the narrative in the Scarlet Letter is quite complicated. It encompasses both action and commentary. The commentary is through a narrator projected in the introduction, who examines the past from the point of view of a 19th century observer. Here it is the 19th century story or 19th century narratives. Even the supernatural and the folk beliefs of mid-17th century New England are subjected to the narrator's incisive irony and skepticism. In this unit we will also give you an idea of the symmetrical design, form and content and open-endedness of the text. Then introduction. The Scarlet Letter is a carefully designed work of fiction in which the supernatural, the marvelous and the strange have been artistically fused. Although Hawthorne considered himself a romancer rather than a novelist, he also admired the well-made novel in which the incidents and scenes are arranged in a symmetrical order, leading to a profound concentration and intensification of meaning. F.O. Matheson has rightly observed that Hawthorne has developed the Scarlet Letter his most coherent plot. Observe that Hawthorne has developed the Scarlet Letter in his most coherent plot, that is Norton Critical Edition, page 279. It is a result of beginning the tale with a scaffold scene and also rounding the tale with a scaffold scene near the end. There is also a scaffold scene right in the middle of the tale. There is no wonder that the scaffold of the pillory comes to acquire a hallowed status for the three major characters in the romance novel. Already I have discussed it is a more romantic novel. While F.O. Matheson, M-A-T-T-H-I-E-S-S-E-N, F.O. Matheson. Here it is the main key point. Okay, you can note down. F.O. Matheson, okay, looks at the structure of the romance novel in terms of the sequencing of the scaffold scenes, with the second scaffold scene showing Dimmesdale in Chillingworth's grip. John C. Gerber makes a fourfold division the Scarlet Letter. In chapter 1 to 8, it is the community in Boston that initiates the action, and the main characters simply suffer the action. While Chillingworth dominates the action in chapters 11-12, Hester dominates this action in chapters 13 to 20. It is Dimmesdale, the priest, who dominates the action in chapter 11 to 14. According to Gerber's analysis, it is the community and the state in Boston that sets the tune, and later on Chillingworth, Hester, Dimmesdale seize the initiative. The thrust of the narrative is to show how the community creates a challenging situation and how the major characters respond to the challenge. The narrative in the Scarlet Letter shows both the authority of the community and the state, and also the resilience and resourcefulness of the major characters like Chillingworth, Hester and Dimmesdale. The narrative in the Scarlet Letter shows both the authority of the community and the state and also the resilience and resourcefulness of the major characters like Chillingworth, Hester and Dimmesdale. Thus the form and content are dexterously dovetailed in the romance novel. Okay, the narrative in the Scarlet Letter shows both the authority of the community and the state, and also the resilience and resourcefulness of the major characters like Chillingworth, Hester and Dimmesdale. Thus the form and content are dexterously dovetailed in the romance novel. There is also a kind of open-endedness of the text because of the use of the device of multiple choice by the narrator, who looks upon the incidents and events of mid-17th century New England from the ironic and skeptical perspective of a mid-19th century observer. You could recall the narrator's comment on the meteors during the second scaffold scene at midnight, and also on Dimmesdale's bearing of his chest in the last scaffold scene. While the incidents are visualized in their awe and mystery, the narrator's voice is ironic and skeptical. Here it is the main key point you can note down. The narrator's voice is ironic and skeptical. Okay, the narrator's voice is ironic and skeptical. It is the narrator's voice that makes the superstitions and folk beliefs of mid-17th century colonial New England somewhat credible to a reader of our time. What do you mean by superstition? Superstitions means some black magic or any other evil things that people believed in that time. It is the narrator's voice that makes the superstition and folk beliefs of mid-17th century colonial New England somewhat credible to a reader of our time. Then come to symmetrical design. It is the three scaffold scenes provided a kind of narrative focus on the drama of sin and redemption in colonial New England. The scenes around the lonely cottage and the forest liberate Hester, Dimmesdale and Paul from the clutches of the stern puritanic ethos and enable them to slowly work their way towards reunion and happiness in the old world. For the scaffold scenes show that a natural life of passion and joy was just not possible in mid-17th century New England. The forest scenes show that a natural life of passion and joy was quite possible for the major characters like Hester and Dimmesdale. While the scaffold scenes show the natural life of passion and joy was not possible in mid-17th century New England, the forest scenes show that a natural life of passion and joy was quite possible for the major characters like Hester and Dimmesdale. While the scaffold scenes are dramatic and somber, the forest scenes are lyrical and romantic. Here is the main key point you can note down in your notebook. While the scaffold scenes are dramatic and somber, it is a three scaffold scene in this novel, and while the scaffold scenes are dramatic and somber, the forest scenes are lyrical and romantic. Okay, here it is the main key point. Scaffold scenes are dramatic and somber, and the forest scenes are lyrical and romantic. Okay, then it is through a subtle interweaving of the scaffold scenes and the forest scenes, the dramatic and lyrical, that the complex narrative structure of the Scarlet Letter is created. It has to be noted, however, that even in the romantic scenes in the forest, the sinister shadow of Chillingworth is not entirely absent. It has to be noted, however, that even in the romantic scenes in the forest, the sinister shadow of Chillingworth is not entirely absent. It is in the forest that Hester tells Dimmesdale that the old man Chillingworth has been her husband. It is the forest that Hester tells Dimmesdale that the old man Chillingworth has been her husband. It is in the forest that Hester throws away the Scarlet Letter and realizes her dream to be free. It is in the forest that Paul refuses to accept her mother till she puts on the badge of shame and dishonor on her bosom. It is in the forest that Hester realizes that she cannot undo her past. It is in the forest that Hester puts on her cap over her lovely flowing hair and becomes appropriately subdued and sedate as a nun. It is true that scaffold scenes and the forest scenes by and large convey the contrary outlook of conformity, order and submission to divine will on the one hand, and individualism, rebellion and assertion of human will on the other hand. The structure of the Scarlet Letter is so artfully designed that the forest scenes and the scaffold scenes interpenetrate and create an observing drama in which the sacred and the profane are inextricably fused. Okay, the structure of the Scarlet Letter is so artfully designed that the forest scenes and scaffold scenes interpenetrate and create an observing drama in which the sacred and profane are inextricably fused. There is no wonder that a radical critic like D.H. Lawrence finds in a romance novel a tight mental allegiance to a mortality which all their passion goes to destroy. Richard Chase, page number 9. Needless to add that the morality is embedded in the scaffold scenes and the passion in the forest scenes. One can look at the tale from the point of view of Dimmesdale, and one can also look at the tale from the point of view of Hester. While for Dimmesdale their sexual relationship was a sin. Okay, while for Dimmesdale their sexual relationship was a sin. For Hester it was a celebration of erotic impulse. So here it is a main key point you can add. While for Dimmesdale it is a sexual relationship was a sin. Okay, for Dimmesdale it is a sexual relationship was a sin, and Hester it was a celebration of erotic impulse. While Dimmesdale it is the sexual relationship was a sin, and Hester it was a celebration of erotic impulse. It is in the sense that the structure of the Scarlet Letter encompasses both the sacred and the profane, the spiritual and the carnal, the divine and the demonic. Then form and content. In this perspective essay, Form and Content in the Scarlet Letter, John C. Gerber has looked at the structure of the romance novel in a different manner. Instead of focusing on the binary contrast between the forest scenes and scaffold scenes, Gerber divides the romance novel into 4 distinct clusters of scenes. Each cluster has a distinct activating agent. The critic of the view, thus the community aside from the main characters, is responsible for the action in the first part, chapters 1 to 8, Chillingworth for that in the second, 11 to 12, Hester for that the third, 13 to 20, and Dimmesdale for that in the fourth, that is 21 to 24. Norton Critical Edition, The Scarlet Letter, page number 284. The focus of the narrative in the first part is on the people in Boston. Apart from the church and the state, the common people also react to the basic situation unfolded. The reactions of the women in the market are very revealing. One old woman of 50 says that the authorities have been very lenient to Hester. They should have imposed on her a more stern punishment. Another one says that Hester's forehead should have been branded with a hot iron. Okay. Another one says that Hester's forehead should have been branded with a hot iron. When a young woman shows sympathy towards Hester, there is another one who says that this woman has brought shame upon us all and ought to die. The Scarlet Letter, page number 70. The nature of community and the state is sharply brought out in the first part of the romance novel. While the narrative creates an antipathy towards the Puritan community in Boston, it also creates sympathy towards Hester and Paul. The scene in the governor's house marks the end of the phase of the narrative. Both Dimmesdale and Chillingworth play a crucial role in the scene. While Dimmesdale defends Hester's right to bring up Paul, Chillingworth wonders why the priest advocates her case so vehemently. From this point, one can see a smooth transition to the second part of the tale in which Chillingworth plays a crucial role. In this section, Dimmesdale is helpless and Chillingworth plays the role of the hunter. It is Dimmesdale's helplessness against the hunter that leads to Hester's activating role in the forest scenes. Chapter 13 to 20. In the fourth section of tale, Dimmesdale elections sermon and confession are the direct outcome of his being rejuvenated by Hester in the forest. In keeping with the nature of the romance novel, both Dimmesdale and Hester are also used as the instrument of a prophecy. The Scarlet Letter becomes a kind of dialogue between the past and future. It encompasses both the terrible burden of the past and immense possibilities of the life in the future. Then come to open-endedness. We have told you that the text of the Scarlet Letter has the capacity to encompass diametrically opposite and conflicting outlook. While for Dimmesdale, the sexual relationship between Hester and the priest was a sin. For Hester, what we did had a consecration of its own. The Scarlet Letter, page number 236. One can look at the tale as a drama of sin and redemption. One can also look at the tale as a love story and on Hester as an Oriental, a pagan. While the scaffold scenes are grim and somber, the first scenes are by and large lyrical and joyous. The juxtaposition of opposite and conflicting outlooks, the pity and the passion, creates an open-endedness in the text, focusing on the ambiguity of the text. Sack-Van Berkowitz says it entails a sustained open-ended tension between fundamentally conflicting outlooks. The office of the Scarlet Letter, page number 25. It is fact that the narrator by and large presents the tale of mid-17th century New England from the ironic and skeptical perspective of a 19th century observer. There is no wonder that in the first scaffold scene, Hester is described by the narrator through an intensely Catholic image of Virgin Mary. The Scarlet Letter, which is a badge of sin and shame, appears to Indians as a symbol of a personage of high dignity among her people. The Scarlet Letter, page 296. Later on, even to the Puritans of Boston, the Scarlet Letter ceases to be a badge of sin and damnation and becomes holy as cross on a nun's bosom. One can safely affirm that the narrator's voice through irony and diverse images creates a sort of polyphony. The community in Boston that is initially so hostile to Hester's defiant radicalism eventually accepts her as a holy nun. There are gaps and silences in the text. When Dimmesdale returns to the forest, he is a rejuvenated man. He is full of energy and of vision. In his election sermon, he visualizes a glorious future for the Republic New England. After he makes his confession, he is completely debilitated. He collapses suddenly and dies in the arms of Hester. It is difficult to understand that a man who returns from the forest completely rejuvenated becomes so weak after his confession. It can also be taken as a mystery of life, perhaps the burst of energy after he returns from the forest, and could be taken as last flicker of a dying candle. There is no doubt that the text is open-ended and could be interpreted differently. Hester becomes pious as a nun towards the end of the tale, yet the narrator's voice is skeptical as ever. Earlier in life, Hester had vainly imagined that she herself might be the destined prophetess, but had long since recognized the impossibility that any mission of divine and mysterious truth should be confided to a woman stained with sin, bowed down with shame, or even burdened with a lifelong sorrow. Even Hester's radicalism is subject to narrator's irony and skepticism. Then let us sum up. The narrative in the Scarlet Letter encompasses both action and commentary. The commentary is from the perspective of a mid-19th century observer of the life in the colonial New England. The symmetry of the narrative design is due to the three scaffold scenes at the beginning, the middle, and at the end. They hold the scenes together. While the scaffold scenes are grim, somber, and dramatic, the forest scenes are lively, bright, and lyrical. While the scaffold scenes are charged with pity, the forest scenes are charged with passion. The narrative generates a kind of dialogue between the past and the future. There is also a kind of open-endedness embedded in the text. Okay, here it is the suggested reading, that is Nathaniel Hawthorne, Tradition and Revolution by Charles Swan, York, The Office of the Scarlet Letter by Sack-Van Berkowitz, Hawthorne in Our Time from Beyond Culture by Lionel Trilling, The Romances from Nathaniel Hawthorne, The Truth of Dreams by Rita K. Golin, Hawthorne's Narrative Strategies by Michael Dune Jackson, The University Press of Mississippi, The American Historical Romance by Josh Decker, Cambridge University Press 1987, and The Scarlet Letter by F.O. Matheson, and Form and Content in the Scarlet Letter by John C. Gerber, included in Norton Critical Edition of the Scarlet Letter 1961, that is strongly recommended. You can go through this book, that is F.O. Matheson and John C. Gerber. Okay, that is strongly recommended. It is already in the unit 9. That is, you can go through this book, or you find this name A4 Matheson and John C. Garver. Okay, A4 Matheson and John C. Garver, it is a main key point in narration. Okay, narrative structure. They describe the narrative structure vividly in the Scarlet letter. Okay, thank you viewers. Please like, share and subscribe this channel. You will get all notification if you push the bell icon, and you will get earliest notification of this channel. Okay, thank you viewers.